From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight. For more House Democrats join a growing list of those calling for President Biden to step aside. Texas is in the bullseye in preparation for Beryl. President Biden is trying to restore confidence, hitting the campaign trail with the First Lady in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. However, behind closed doors, calls for him to leave the top of the ticket are growing louder after a critical meeting of Congressional Democrats. We have the latest from the White House, and the campaign trail, Beryl, is likely to be a hurricane when it comes ashore, the first to hit the U.S. mainland this season.
Tonight, 4 more House Democrats join a growing list of those calling for President Biden to step aside. And Texas is in the bullseye as residents along the Gulf Coast hunker down in preparation for Beryl. First, though, President Biden trying to restore confidence, hitting the campaign trail with the First Lady in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania. But behind closed doors, the calls for him to leave the top of the ticket are growing louder after a critical meeting of Congressional Democrats. And what some voters are saying is top Democrats call this a critical week ahead. We have the latest from the White House and the campaign trail.
The storm is now intensifying in the abnormally warm waters, with landfall just hours away, bringing with it up to 15 inches of rain, winds more than 80 miles per hour.
Beryl is likely to be a hurricane when it comes ashore, the first to hit the U.S. mainland this season. The storm is now intensifying in the abnormally warm waters, with landfall just hours away, bringing with it up to 15 inches of rain, winds more than 80 miles per hour, and a possible 7-foot storm surge. We have team coverage on the ground in the storm zone.
A flurry of new evacuation warnings as a new wildfire explodes in Santa Barbara. More than a dozen major fires are burning in that state, as the region remains locked in a record-breaking heat wave. Our weather team is tracking it all. Overseas, the crucial French election that could impact the future of Europe. Soufi Burridge reports from Paris. Reports of progress on a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, as a key demand is now dropped from negotiations. The death toll continues to climb inside Gaza. Our Matt Gutman with a rare glimpse into the embattled city of Rafah. A summer block party turns deadly in a Detroit neighborhood. The police appeal for the public's help, the dramatic rescue in Hawaii after a puppy fell in a deep hole, the big upset at Wimbledon.And America Strong tonight, 1 runner, 7 continents, and the enormous challenge he overcomes with every stride. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We have breaking news tonight as Beryl gains strength now on a collision course with Texas, where it's expected to make landfall in just a few hours. But we do begin tonight with the race for the White House. President Biden back on the campaign trail fighting for his political survival. Top House Democrats held a crucial meeting about his future today. Some are now saying privately in that meeting what 5 others have previously said publicly, that Biden should step aside. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are weighing in on his ability to defeat former President Trump in November, and we are on the ground with voters. What they're saying about the president's future. ABC senior White House correspondent Selena Wang leads us off tonight.
Tonight, growing panic in a critical meeting about President Biden's future, with several top House Democrats privately saying he should step aside. Sources tell ABC News Representative Jerry Nadler, Adam Smith, Mark Takano, and Joe Morell suggested Biden should end his campaign. Leader Hakeem Jeffries did not take a stance, the sources said. But President Biden on offense, hitting the campaign trail in battleground Pennsylvania, fighting to save his own candidacy.
And I, honest to God, have never more optimistic about America's future if we stick together. I really mean it.
Visiting a black church in Philadelphia, then stopping by a campaign office. The president defiant, still confident in his party's support. Yes. Even as more Democratic leaders lose confidence in him. 5 Democratic members of Congress now publicly calling for President Biden to drop out. Even Biden's closest allies acknowledge time is running out.
I believe that he can do it, but I think that this is a really critical week. I do think the clock is ticking.
And others questioning his ability to defeat Donald Trump.
He should be mopping the floor with Donald Trump. Joe Biden is running against a criminal. It should not be even close, and there's only one reason it is close, and that's the president's age.
Biden trying to turn around his image, speaking exclusively with ABC's George Stephanopoulos.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the good job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
Well, that is the answer that most concerned me as well. This is not just about whether he gave it the best college try, but rather whether he made the right decision to run or to pass the torch.
Congressman Adam Schiff saying Vice President Kamala Harris, quote, very well could win overwhelmingly against Trump. In New Orleans this weekend, Harris trying to shift the focus back to the former president.
This is probably the most significant election of our lifetime. You have the former president who is running to become president again, who has openly talked about his admiration of dictators and his intention to be a dictator on day one.
These next few days could be make or break. Congress returns on Monday. They'll be having more intense discussions about the president's future. It could open the floodgates for more to publicly call on the president to step aside. And all eyes will be on the president during the NATO summit, watching to see if he can show his leadership on the world stage. Lindsay?
All right, Selena Wang from the White House for us. Thanks so much, Selena. Despite growing calls from some for President Biden to step aside, he's standing firm and making a direct appeal to voters. The president out on the campaign trail in Pennsylvania today, and voters are weighing in on Biden's path ahead. ABC's Christiane Cordero is on the ground with voters in the Keystone State.
As top Democrats and donors scramble in Washington, tonight an impassioned group of voters here in the swing state of Pennsylvania are focused on the road to November and committed to Joe Biden.
I'm definitely sticking by him. I said, I don't care if they push him in a wheelchair, I'm going to vote for him.
I think that everyone should keep in mind the core of the importance of this election.
Despite the president's poor debate performance, many voters say the stakes in November are too high for him to drop out now.
I fear that if we were to go to have another Trump administration, the rights and privileges I had when I was her age, she will no longer have them.
But even in this group of staunch Democrats, some believe the president staying in the race is too risky.
Well, I'm concerned, as we all are, that he might not be up to it, and it's so vital that we win.
Ultimately, staying or going is Biden's own call to make.
If he makes that decision to step down, then I will go along with what he decides to do.
Who would be the next person in your mind to be at the top of the ticket?
Well, we have a vice president, and she should be the first top of the ticket. That's what I believe.
Lindsay, we asked the voters you heard from, if Biden were to drop out, is there a Democrat who you would not support at the top of the ticket? Everyone said no. They would ultimately vote for whoever the Democrat was running against Trump. Lindsay?
Pivotal time. Christiane, thank you. Now to that dangerous weather threat. Beryl is gaining strength, taking aim at the Texas coast just hours away from making landfall. Coastal residents are loading up on supplies, buying gas, boarding up their homes and businesses as they brace for flooding, gusty winds and power outages. The storm's outer bands are already impacting the area, and officials are making it clear that people need to evacuate before it's too late. Here's ABC's Victor Oquendo in Texas tonight.
Tonight, Beryl intensifying, taking aim at the Texas Gulf Coast, landfall just hours away. South Texas residents bracing for torrential rain, damaging winds, and dangerous storm surge. Preparations underway. Homes and businesses boarding up.
We're boarding and we plan on moving, but we're not sure yet.
Officials urging residents and visitors to get out now.
If you're moving, today's the day to move away from those areas. You don't want to be on the road tomorrow.
In Port Lavaca, residents loading up on supplies. Our Melissa Adon is there.
Families here in Port Lavaca unhooking their RV, getting ready to evacuate ahead of Beryl. While there's a voluntary evacuation warning here, the mayor stressing for those who need it the most to get out while they still can.
Yes, that would be best. People were asking about the RVs. We recommend that people in RVs leave.
And here in Galveston, lifelong resident Ryan Connor has been through several storms, now protecting his store from Beryl.
And you got the sandbags out?
Yeah, I mean, we're not expecting much from this storm, but we don't take any chances around here. You have way too much stuff to lose.
The storm, now less than 150 miles off the coast, expected to make landfall overnight as a hurricane.
and we are starting to feel some of Beryl's outer bands here in Galveston. Flooding is expected. Those strong winds are a concern, but it is the storm surge that we are watching closely. It is dangerous. 6 feet possible. That is life-threatening. And once Beryl passes, it will be high tide. So all that water, it will not be receding quickly. Lindsay?
That area already swamped. Victor, thank you. And I want to get right to meteorologist Rachel Bryars from our Houston station, KTRK. Rachel, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're tracking Beryl. Just time this out for us and how bad you can expect it to be.
Yeah, Lindsay, all eyes have been on Tropical Storm Beryl, continuing to make its way up to the north. Should make landfall as at least a Category 1 hurricane as we head into tonight, mainly between the 2 to 4 a.m. time period right around Matagorda Bay. Then going to continue up to the north, still as a tropical storm as it nears College Station. Now, a couple of our main concerns here coming into play for storm surge, 4 to 7 feet can be anticipated along the middle to upper Texas coastline. In addition to that, looking at rainfall totals coming in closer to 5 to 10 inches around or just east of the path of Beryl. And in isolated spots closer to 15 inches. That heat wave, though, something else we're talking about off into the west. Las Vegas could actually be nearing their all-time record of 117 degrees throughout the rest of this week. Lindsay?
Wow, almost 120 degrees as that rain falls there. Rachel, thank you. Next tonight, that historic heat is fanning explosive wildfires in California, overwhelming firefighters and forcing evacuations. Let's bring in ABC's Jacqueline Lee in Los Angeles for us tonight. And Jacqueline, I understand that just overnight, the size of the lake fire doubled.
That's right, Lindsay. Fire officials say their main priority is keeping the lake fire near Santa Barbara contained and out of surrounding neighborhoods. As you mentioned, yes, it did double in size overnight, consuming more than 13,000 acres, partially because of this prolonged heat. It is 0% contained. Officials issuing their first evacuation orders overnight, as well as an air quality watch in Santa Barbara County. Turning to the French fire in Mariposa County that forced more than 1,000 people to evacuate. That is now 60% contained. This heat wave here in California unrelenting. These triple-digit temperatures breaking records in places like Redding as well as Palmdale. Lindsay, this is a very dangerous time of year, and officials are warning these fires can pop up at any point. Lindsay.
Clearly dangerous, Jacqueline. Thank you. Overseas now to France, where there's a lot of uncertainty tonight. The far right fell short of its goal to win their first majority in decades. Voters turned out to celebrate the results after casting their ballots in the pivotal runoff election. No party won a majority of the votes. So what comes next for France? Here's ABC's foreign correspondent Soufi Burridge in Paris.
Tonight, relieved crowds on the streets of Paris after a shocking defeat in a crucial French election. A left-wing coalition winning the most seats in parliament, keeping France's increasingly popular far-right party, who were predicted to have a historic night, out of government. The election comes weeks after French President Emmanuel Macron took the huge political risk of dissolving parliament and calling for snap elections.
Well, after France's far right won the first round of this election, tonight it is the left in France which is celebrating, including parties on the hard left.
Macron's centrist alliance coming second. Tonight, Macron's protégé, the current Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, saying he'll step down. Tactical manoeuvres helped knock the far-right National Rally with its anti-immigration agenda into third place. People on the French left relieved.
The politics of fear that have been pushed by the far right have taken, I think, a big hit tonight, and it's a good thing for us.
And Lindsay, people on the left are really savouring this victory, but no party will have a majority of seats in the French Parliament. Macron remains president for the next 3 years, but he's been weakened in this election, and tonight there's real uncertainty about whether any parties can form a government. Lindsay?
Unexpected result there, Tom. Thank you. There's word tonight of a potential breakthrough in the ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel. This is the ravages of the war on full display in Rafah. It's now a ghost town with buildings reduced to piles of rubble and debris. ABC's Matt Gutman, one of the first journalists given access to the city by the IDF, takes us inside the destruction.
Tonight, Hamas dropping its demand that Israel commit to a permanent ceasefire, edging the two parties closer to an agreement on a ceasefire and hostage release. In Israel, the calls for a deal intensifying, as is the pressure on Hamas after 9 months of a war that have left Gaza in ruins.
Right over there is the city of Rafah, the focus of Israel's fighting over the past 2 months.
and of U.S. condemnation. On our visit to Gaza's border with Egypt late last week, the wreckage and sound of war unmistakable. There is small arms fire just on the other end of this berm here. An estimated 1.3 million Palestinians forced to evacuate. The IDF says what was left, tunnels and hundreds of booby-trapped buildings. So the scale of the destruction here in what used to be the street is absolutely breathtaking. Every single house is destroyed. All that you see is a little alleyway carved in the rubble. All that's left is twisted rebar, concrete, and household goods. Israel's prime minister has vowed total victory over Hamas, but the military taking a more sober view. It seems that Hamas is preparing to fight a very long insurgency. They're digging in, they're recruiting more people.
Hamas will remain with the ambition to be a terror organization. Will you and me be talking 5 years from now about Hamas as a terror organization in Gaza? The answer is yes.
Lindsay, mediators, including the U.S., are meeting in Qatar this week to try to finalize the terms of this ceasefire. It would begin with a 6-week pause in fighting, during which over 30 hostages still being held in Gaza would be released, including possibly Americans. Lindsay.
So many on both sides want that ceasefire. Matt, thank you. The holiday travel rush, millions of travelers taking to the roads and skies in what's expected to be record numbers. Let's get right to ABC's Morgan Norwood at Newark Airport for us. Morgan, officials say that this could be the busiest travel day of the summer.
Lindsay, we're talking about the peak travel day, which means airports from coast to coast will be busy. Certainly that travel rush has come in waves here at Newark, but overall, TSA expects to screen close to 3 million passengers just today alone. And that big of a travel crush is a critical test for airlines. Delta and United seeing a swell in passengers this holiday stretch. American Airlines says it's their busiest day in history, which is why they're going to be putting up more than 6,500 flights to get everyone home. They've also issued a travel advisory for those flying in and out of the storm zone, of course, talking Hurricane Beryl, but it's the roads where we'll likely see that mass exodus. More than 60 million Americans will be making that road trip this holiday stretch, which is important to know if you're going to be headed out. If you leave now, you're more likely to run into traffic, but wait it out a little bit and leave later in the evening, and you should be in pretty good shape. Lindsay.
Or maybe try and stretch it out to Monday morning. Morgan, thank you. Still much more ahead here on World News Tonight. This Sunday, a block party turns deadly in Detroit, what police are saying, and the dramatic and tight rescue of one lucky dog in Hawaii. Next tonight, authorities in Michigan are investigating a mass shooting on Detroit's east side. 2 people were killed, at least 17 others wounded. Authorities say the victims were all attending a block party. Officials are appealing to the public for information. When we come back, the American showdown at Wimbledon. Who's going home and who's still in the hunt? To the index now, a surprise ending to today's battle of the American women at Wimbledon. 19th seed Emma Navarro beating U.S. Open champ and number 2 seed Coco Gauff in straight sets to advance to her first Grand Slam quarterfinal. On the men's side, Tommy Paul powered his way to advance with a straight set win, reaching the quarterfinals for the first time in his Wimbledon career. A close call for a 9-month-old pup in Hawaii. The dog named Misty became trapped in a narrow cave with no apparent way out. Its owners reached out on social media to a well-known nature vlogger who was able to reach Misty. He attached a harness to her, and she was able to be pulled to safety. Misty is now back home with her family and said to be doing well. When we come back, America Strong. One man's determined journey to 7 continents and 7 marathons. Finally tonight, America Strong. 1 runner, 7 continents, overcoming an unseen obstacle with each step.
More than 183 miles spanning 7 years and 7 continents. Derek Stefuriak makes no small plans. After running his first marathon in Nevada in 2018, he took his passion internationally.
I saw that there was actually a marathon in Antarctica. It sounded pretty epic to me.
In Antarctica, he ran all 26.2 miles of the marathon at Union Glacier.
Walking to the start line.
Then the 52-year-old was off to Europe for a marathon in Paris. In South America, he ran the Chilean Volcano Marathon.
And I thought, what could be really big again? And then Mount Everest has a marathon.
So he ran the Mount Everest Marathon in Asia. Then South Africa, before finally finishing his world tour in Brisbane, Australia last month. And yet, he's still not finished crisscrossing the globe.
Next month, I'm going to the North Pole. We have to wear a life vest while we're running in case there's a crack in the ice.
Derek has accomplished all this while living with MS. He's refusing to let his diagnosis slow him down.
From a guy who limped after jogging for 10 minutes to trekking up Mount Everest to run a marathon down it, it's incredible, no?
Incredible indeed. What a spirit. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Lindsay Davis. For all of us here, have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.